Okay, so welcome guys to the Indie Authors Podcast. Today we have a great author with us, someone who's recently released a book, Let There Be Fire. Her name is Rachel Morley. And so I'd like to introduce you guys to Rachel Morley. My name is Hassan Trek. Rachel, I want to ask you a little bit about your background before we get into becoming an author. Could you talk to me about your background? Where'd you grow up at? Just a little bit of basis of how you grew up and how you came up.
Yeah. It's actually kind of interesting, Hase, because my family had moved here from the Caribbean to the U.S. My dad was a U.S. Marine.
Wow.
And I grew up relatively poor. And to kind of illustrate that, it was that we didn't have heating in winter, so we all just kind of piled up the blankets to share the same bed.
Mhm.
And we didn't have AC in summer. So that led to lots of trips to the library because the library had air conditioning, and lots of road trips just to go and see the country because gas was relatively cheap way back when, and the car had AC. So it really inspired my love of nature and my love of secondary worlds and fantasy specifically.
Okay.
And that's kind of the small foundation of way back where Let There Be Fire comes from and where being an author comes from.
Okay. Wow, that's interesting. So your dad was a U.S. Marine, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
would you say a lot of his habits or his discipline reflects upon like your discipline in your authorship?
I don't know about that. I am very much like my dad, where he's very quiet, he's very reserved,
Okay.
and I'm also a very quiet, reserved person. And it's taken probably the last 10 years of my life to be more talkative and to actually agree to do something like an interview. Because before I would have been like, no, don't look at me. Like, just shy beyond belief is what I would say. Like, look at this thing I did, but don't look at me.
Uh,
Yeah.
what's something that inspired you? What is some reading that you read that made you think, oh man, like this is probably a passion of mine, or this is something that I might take a risk at? Like what's something that encouraged you?
I mean, the first thing that I really fell in love with in terms of fantasy, like the first book I remember really, really loving, had to be Dealing with Dragons by Patricia C. Reed.
Okay.
And the reason was because every character was very aware that they were in a fairy tale.
Okay.
And it was so fun and it was so hilarious. And I just like devoured the entire series. And growing up I just kept reading more and more fantasy, trying to like go into that second world. But I never hit that humor again until Nicholas Ames. And I would get bored in high school because I'd read so much. I had already read books that we were supposed to go over.
Yeah.
So I was bored and just kind of like doodling my own stories. But I didn't take it seriously until pretty recently, probably like the last 5 years. I was like, you know what? I actually want to do this. I've had people look at my little scribbles and they're like, oh yeah, I really like it. I really like this little adventure, or I really like this character. So I started really honing in on what they like to try and make that the thing that I can do in order to make a compelling story. And it's been like the last 5 to 6 years that I was like, all right, I'm going to try and take this seriously. And it wasn't until 2020 when I was like sitting down, like, no, we're going to make this happen because now I have all the time in the world.
That's good. You found the courage. That's good. Let There Be Fire is your first one, correct?
It's the first one that I've completed, and I have the second book, Redwater Dreams, about to go into editing.
Okay.
And we're rewriting the third book, Spirit of Chaos, right now.
Okay.
So
they're all connected. Is this a series?
it is a series. I've attempted several novels before, but like halfway through, as I was just like, I forgot where I was going. Even if I had an outline, it just didn't feel right. And I just shelved it. Like I still have shelved things in my computer that I'm just like, am I ever going to come back to this?
In your bio, you talk about short stories. You have a compilation of short stories that you used to write, right?
I have a collection of short stories. I don't know how, if I had to count them, I'd say it's probably like only 7 short stories. It's not a lot.
Okay.
And a couple of those I'm not really proud of.
Don't mind it. It's
Yeah.
your earlier work.
I know, but I think it's because like the very first one where I was like, you know what, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to take writing seriously. I had written a short story called Under the Lemon Grove, and it was for a haunting of words. If you ever read the Of Words anthologies, and it had been years since I've doodled anything, And so it was like my first attempt to like really go back in.
Hmm.
And I had just missed the mark for getting accepted into the anthology, like just barely. So I was like, all right, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. This is what people like. That's my craft.
Hmm.
And there's a couple of them where I just kind of lost it. I'm like, I'm just not proud of these short stories, but they're still in the computer for whatever reason.
So you were
Yeah.
going to put that into a contest, and
Yeah.
you said you were this close for it to like really kick off and pop off for you.
Yeah. I had made it through like the first two rounds of
Mhm.
the board going over. It was, I think they said they had like 1,200 submissions.
Wow.
So So being this close with that many cool submissions, because I think they were only taking 50 out of like 1,200. So I'm probably wrong because this was years ago. But I remember it was like a lot of submissions, and it was like not that many were getting in because they had limited space. So to be that close, I was like, okay, I'm on to something. I just need to like hone in and just work on that piece.
Okay.
And yeah,
Wow.
which,
Wow. That's
yeah.
amazing. And so I'm not really, quite familiar with that. So can you explain like what would have been the transitional period? Like when you have went through the judges and they would have okayed it and said, listen, you're the finalist or whatever. Like what would have happened from that point on?
What happened is there's a Facebook site called Fiction Writing, and the guy who started the page had also started Scout Media, and this was his anthology to try and get writers, boosted, try and get them started. And I
Mhm.
was like, oh yeah, that's really cool. And about every year they did an anthology. It's the of words. It's just like kind of get you a short story, 10,000 words or less,
Mhm.
uh, a story start to complete. Um, to get yourself out there and to like kind of get your practice in there. I was like, oh yeah, it's really cool.
Mhm.
I actually submitted almost late to the deadline because the theme was haunting. So there had to be some sort of death, some sort of spirit, like supernatural thing going on, some sort of, ghostly thing, some kind of haunting aspect. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. And it kind of just came to me later on, like, what if we tell it from the other perspective? Like, what if it's the perspective of the ghost who can't interact with the people that have lost them?
Mm.
So it was an interesting angle, but I used so many crutch words. My crutch words were just and
Mhm.
feel, and there's so many of them that's what booted me out. Because when
You
I
were really-
submitted, it was like 2 months, and I'm just like sweating bullets. Like, what if they didn't like it?
Mm.
I got an email saying you're going to the second round. I was like, yes. Going into the third round, yes.
I'm listening. Yeah.
No, it was like 45 days later or something. It wasn't quite 2 months because then I got the email of like, you just missed it. Like we filled out, and like that one apparently went through so much debate on the board,
Mhm.
and that's what killed it was my crutch words.
Let's
Yeah.
talk about your most recent book that you put out, Let There Be Fire.
hmm We have it on Kickstarter right now, and it's actually about to close, and we'll put it on Indiegogo for a little bit more marketing to just get more people's eyes on it, and also to like give anyone who wants to participate early that they get some sort of reward for it, whether that's
Mhm.
early access to the ebook, early access to the audiobook, any sort of character art, any sort of little knickknack or something to kind of go with it that's inspired by the book.
Mhm.
Because I'm sort of that weirdo where I was like, wow, this would be a lot easier if I just had a team of people with me on this self-publishing journey and I didn't have to do it all myself.
Mhm.
And quite by chance, I found someone who had always wanted to do voice acting and who always wanted to do audiobooks. And I
Wow.
was like, oh, I have a book, like we should totally team up. And
Yeah.
he agreed in the most English way possible. So me being very dense, I didn't notice that he agreed like so soon. I was like, so are we like actually going to? It's like, oh yeah, I thought we agreed. I was like, okay, cool. And then quite by chance, I found someone who they are an artist online, and that's like their side gig.
Mhm.
And um, what made me really want to work with her is that she understood like these fantasy creatures, where I wouldn't have to like sit down and describe what these things look like and what they are. She's like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, I know what dark elves are, or oh yeah, I know what these things are. I was like, cool. So here's my idea. And what I had in my head is not the covers that we have right now. The covers she did are a lot cooler than what I had in my head. So I'm just so thrilled and so happy. I was like, okay, this is going to be a teamwork thing. And I let them know that this was going to be a long process because we're working on book 3. I was like, this is probably going to be 5 books long. So if you don't want to participate in this, like, I 100% get it.
Mm-hmm.
But no, they were very excited for it, which made me more excited. Like, okay, there's like more and more people that want to get on this thing. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's quite by chance and just like the blessing of God that I was able to meet these people. And I'm just so happy that I did.
How long you been working with them? How long did it take you to release the book? You said since 2020, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it was April of 2020. It's like, because I was like, oh yeah, this thing will like blow over. We have 15 days. And then it kept going. And I was like, I have so much time right now. I don't know what to do with myself. And I'm stressing out because I don't know what to do with myself. I was like,
Yeah.
I need to escape. I need to go into a different world. So I sat down, started writing it because I was like, oh, it's just gonna be a short story.
Mhm.
But I did take like a 6-month hiatus because holidays had come up, birthdays had come up, and I was in a relationship at the time. So I had taken a big hiatus, and then towards the end of 2021, is I had Let There Be Fire was so big. I was like, I just need to break it into 2, and I started like kind of combing through. I found my editor that um, she had been laid off of work, and she was like, well, I need to make some income, and one of the things is like the editorials for fiction is so saturated right now. So she put herself up there. I was like, all right, you know what? Let's do this. I let her know again, this is going to be like a 5-book series. So if she wanted to back out, that was up to her.
Yeah.
And she's like, nah, it's great. I was like, I can't pay you all at once. Can I do it in installments, chapter by chapter? And she thankfully agreed to that. So I was very, very lucky to have found my team.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, on a crowdfunding sources like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, they don't have weirdo with a team as an option. It's like, are you a nonprofit? Are you like all alone, or are you a company? I'm like, where's weirdo with the team? Like, we're
Would
just
have
a
been
group
a
of
lot easier, right?
yeah, we're just a group of like randos who came together and said, this is cool. Like, let's do it.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. They definitely need that category. I fit into that.
Yeah, I'm going to send them a tweet later.
Yeah, that's good. I want to ask you another question because you talk about your team, solidifying your team. I know for me,
Yeah,
it took me a minute to find like who my editor was. It's weird how things happen, but it's like once I found one, the pieces started to all come together. Um,
yeah.
would you say things were like a challenge or like things came pretty easily putting your team together to get your book out?
I don't know if I would say that it was a challenge or easy. I would call it somewhere in the middle because a lot of it did happen serendipitously. Is that like I had met these individuals, I'd met my narrator and I had met my artist before considering them like, hey, you want to do this thing with me? And we'd become friends. And it wasn't until later on I was like, oh, you do this or you want to do this. Do you want to do this thing with me? The
Mhm.
only person I deliberately sought out was my editor because I needed someone who understood that this is not young adult, it's going to be adult fantasy adventure.
Mhm.
And so finding someone who didn't want to do YA was kind of a nightmare. And finding Anne, um, again, she didn't really have anything on her for editing fictional work. This is just something she wanted to start. So I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
we're going to work through this. We're going to see how this goes. And I'm so glad I took a chance with her. I'm so glad because she helped make sure that, everything was kind of, prim and that the stylistic properties weren't just ripped out. And if there was anything that was inconsistent, she like talked to me about like, hey, I noticed this was happening, but 2 chapters ago, it was like not that quite that way. Like the voice of this character has kind of changed a little bit. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, let me go back and fix this. So I was so, so happy that I found her. So, so happy. And it's just been like, again, it's not easy. It's not challenging for me. It's just, I think the word I would use is tedious because you have to work on it so long and you have to have maintaining a lot of close contact, like not like face to face, like, but you have to keep in good contact with each other on a regular basis.
Like what was that process like for you? You know what I mean? Getting before you
Um,
got to the team aspect.
well, again, like my situation is so odd is the word I'm going to use because I'm not like in the city or in the suburbs. I'm on a ranch where I still have to go out and work with the animals.
Yeah.
So I knew that if I sat down and I started getting really into it, I'd forget time because I would forget to eat. and stuff. So I'd actually use my old cell phone
Mm-hmm.
to set alarms to say, hey, dummy, drink water. Hey, did you eat today? Hey, you got to go and check on the animals in the barn. Hey, it's 6 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
So I would sit down, get in the zone. My alarm would go off, and um, it was actually kind of a good thing because if I was like in the middle of like an intense scene or something, a lot of people complain, I have to finish the scene. But it's actually kind of good for me to have to walk away to go get lunch or to go make sure that my animals are okay or to go check out whatever weird noise is going on like on the far side of the farm.
Okay.
And because like as I'm walking around, my brain is mulling over what just happened and where is this going. So it helped so much to just keep that flow going and to try and keep that voice consistent from start to finish. Like again, Anne would find things that like it didn't quite fit and I'd have to like tweak it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, it was very smooth as far as the content was.
Okay. Did you do weekly goals like a word count, a page count, or was it
Mm,
just you flowed? You just kind of
no.
flowed with how your day went.
Yeah, I knew that if I gave myself a page count or a word count goal, I would stress myself out so much because I still have to get up and I have to do all these things. And I was just like, I can't put that. So it was sort of trying to rewire my brain to say, hey, when I get all this done, my reward is I get to escape into this world. So it was very much like like you have to trick yourself almost.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of people they harp on I have to have my word count, otherwise I won't get the book done. Which I mean that's fine if that works for you. That's 100. It won't work for me. I will
Mm-hmm.
just stress out the entire time.
I get you.
So
I
yeah,
get you.
yeah,
I started off that way. I was a page count, word count person, but it didn't last long because I started to go with the flow of things. Like I knew that I just wanted to get time to write. Now that writing may take me an hour to 2 hours, or it may take me 30 minutes that day, based
hmm
upon like sometimes it be your emotions or your stress level. Sometimes
yeah,
you're so stressed, you do need to escape to go there, but sometimes you'll get there and you you have a loss of words, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
so that may take you time just to get back into that space to start writing again.
yeah,
And, yeah, I think that was an interesting thing that you said because a lot of people have like specific goals as I need 1,000 words a day.
yeah,
I've heard that Stephen King, who we know is quite experienced at the
yeah.
art of writing, will sit for
hmm
5 hours out the day, but he starts it at an earlier standpoint in the day. So,
yeah. Yeah,
everybody
but
picks their own
a lot of us
wisdom.
can't afford to just sit for 5 hours anyway,
Not,
because
not right now.
modern day is go, 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 go. Like you can't. And you know, I Stephen King is very, very successful. I don't like his books, but he's very, very successful. So my opinion means nothing.
I'm not gonna say nothing to that. I like the movies. I haven't read any of his books, but I have watched, if not all of his movies. Um,
Mhm,
what else I want to talk to you about? Oh, so you have the other books. I want to talk to you about these next forthcoming books
mhm.
that will start to, put the series together. Can you tell us anything about the next one that you're about to release, and when are you releasing it as well?
The goal is to try and make it annually, just to give myself enough time to make it consistent to get the others out.
Hmm.
So the goal is every summer to release a new book.
Okay.
So like I was telling you, is that book two is going through edits right now.
Hmm.
Um, and book three I'm currently rewriting. I think I have like 4 chapters written in book three, and I had to rewrite it because as I was following where the plots were going, I was like, this just doesn't feel right. Like it feels too rigid.
Hmm.
And I was like, let's just throw it away and start over. Like, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
How do you come up with your titles, and how do you keep interesting titles? Like for me, when I hear "Let There Be Fire," I'm like, "Oh, this sounds serious." Like, how do you come up with this?
I'm gonna tell you right now, I steal my titles
Yeah.
in like the nicest piratey way possible. It's not
Okay.
really stealing, it's like borrowing, but without ever giving it back. And it's that I was like, for the longest time, it didn't have a title, and I was like halfway through where book one ends right now. Like I was halfway through there,
Hmm.
and I was like, and the title and like the chapters didn't really have titles either. They just said new chapter,
Hmm.
and I was driving down to go to a community help uh for like 2020. What were we doing? Uh it was government boxes for like families in need.
Hmm.
And I'd been a volunteer for like the last 15 years. So this was just a usual thing. And I just had like my YouTube on my cell phone on because my radio doesn't work. And it had suggested this indie author, not indie author. Oh my gosh, I keep typing indie author. So stuck. This indie artist musician called Aviators. And one of the songs it gave me was Whenever It Rains. And I was like, I love this song so much. So I started looking through more and more of his work. And one of the songs was Let There Be Fire. And it was like such an intense song. I was like, I really like this. Like, this is like the tone of it. I didn't realize it was like a Dark Souls fan song because I don't play video games. But but I loved it so much, like how intense it was. Is like driving down, I was like, I could really imagine like the characters in my head that I've been playing with, like that they're like in this like final showdown. And I was like, I'm just gonna steal these titles because these are really good songs. These are really good titles. So
That's
all
a
the
good
book,
thing.
all the book titles, all the chapter titles are just stolen from him. And but he's
Okay.
such a good musician too. Like I would highly
What's the
recommend
musician's
checking out
name again? Sorry, run that name back.
Aviators.
Dave Gator.
Yeah,
Okay.
Aviators. Yeah, like to
The
fly a plane.
Aviators.
Aviators.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. The Aviators. Okay. Wow.
yeah.
Wow. You know, wow, it's crazy. I think about a bunch of authors that I converse with. I've had conversations, and we've always had this conversation about how music inspires you to write. That's
Yes.
an interesting point because my first book is called Circle of Pain. It comes from a verse from a rapper that's called Styles
Yeah.
P. And that's
Yeah.
how I titled it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think we met. I got on Instagram, and you had just released "Are You Numb Yet?"
Yeah,
Like you had just released
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that, you know how that came about? It's funny. You
What?
see my tooth missing? I'm getting a dental implant. I might have a tooth in here in like another
Yeah.
month. So I remember going to the dentist and she was saying, do you feel numb yet? And then I knew I had this concept about, substance abuse being that it
Yeah.
impacted my family and stuff. So it just seemed like that was it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Just
It's
taking
so weird. Like you find inspiration like the strangest, most throwaway places, and you're like, no, this is something that means something.
Yup. Yup.
It's
It,
great.
it hits you differently and it's
Yeah.
catchy. Like, like if this was McDonald's, you knew that would be a good slogan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, how can we stay in contact with you? Also, we want to acquire the book. So how can we acquire the books, paper copies, whatever you have available?
Right now, nothing is released yet because we're still in our pre-order for Kickstarter and going into Indiegogo for pre-order.
Okay.
But afterwards, it will go wide. So pretty much in as many places as you can get an ebook, it will be there.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
keep me
So
posted for sure. I definitely want to
yeah,
get my copy.
and I will keep everyone posted on Instagram. I just made a Facebook page for R.A. Morley,
Okay.
and on the weekends I try and go onto Twitch TV to just kind of hang out with everyone.
Hmm.
And half the time if we're not hanging out with the animals on the barn, we're going over uh, the books and like if I'm editing something or if I have like an interesting idea or if someone wants to just chat about it, there's
Hmm.
that too. So and then there's the occasional D&D game on Twitch channel. So
Okay. So you on Twitch? What's your Instagram? Can they just type in Rachel Morley and
you can
find you?
just type in Rachel Moore. You'll probably find me. My Instagram handle is Morley Writes Books,
Morley Writes. Okay.
just to try and keep it simple.
Okay.
And my Twitch is R_A_Morley. Just like trying to make it as easy as possible to just find me.
Okay. Absolutely. And I know I didn't get into that farm stuff, but I want to ask you a few questions before we get on about the farm. How long you been operating on the farm? You guys have a farm. How long you guys had the
Yeah.
farm?
It was about, I want to say 8 years ago. It's probably a little bit longer.
Is
No, it might be 8 years ago then. Ever since like 2 years ago, I don't know what days are anymore. So,
so
but it's probably 8 years that my mom had started it, and I was like, oh, this is kind of weird, but I started getting used to like helping her with the animals. I was like, I like this, and I started doing it myself. So we've got some cows, we got some sheep, and prefer like it's weird, but I prefer raising sheep over cows just because like they're a lot more endearing and they just like want to cuddle all the time.
I was gonna
And
ask
like
you.
my cows want to cuddle all the time too, but like you're 2,000 pounds, you can't cuddle me that way.
It's just a heavy cuddle.
Yeah, yeah. My bull Norman, he does not realize he's 2,000 pounds. He thinks he's a puppy. So
Wow. Wow, that's amazing.
yeah,
I was gonna ask you which one is your baby, but you told me the sheep. The sheeps are your
yeah.
babies. Okay.
No, my absolute mama's boy outside of Norman the bull has to
uh,
be my dairy ram, and his name is Rory the ram.
Okay,
And
roll it around.
yeah, he's an absolute mama's boy, 100%. He'll just come up and he's just like on me, just leaning like, hey, Hugh
Wow.
mom, I need your attention on me, only me. You're petting someone else. If I just get in front of you, you can't pet them. You have to pet them.
What would you say is hard or easy to manage, a farm or ranch?
I'm gonna just say hard. It sounds easy in theory until you start doing it and you realize, oh, right, these are sentient creatures
Mm,
that they have a will of their own and they can't communicate to you. So you have to guess. So,
wow.
but once you get used to each of them and you kind of like know their little ticks,
Hmm.
is you can tell right away if something is off.
Mm, mm,
So like you can tell like, oh, so and so's a little bit lethargic today. Like, are they tired or are they not feeling good? This is a not feeling good sign.
hmm.
Or like, so and so is like really kind of agitated. What's going on? And you can kind of assess from there.
Have you ever I would like to say, like, have you ever dealt with the pain of losing an animal yet? Or
Oh
no?
yeah, all the time. I
Okay.
think the worst ones are when you have like a new calf or a new lamb and they're just so new to life and they just have a sudden infant death syndrome going on
Mm,
where they're fine when you put them to bed and then you're like you go to sleep, you're like, oh, what a wonderful day, everyone's happy, healthy, blah 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 blah. You get good sleep, you wake up
mhm.
in the morning and they haven't woken up. And it's just, that is the hardest part every time. It's the hardest part. I
Wow.
think that's harder than if you've had one for a few years,
Wow.
because then at that point you're like, at least that they were happy and they had like a full life up to that point, even if you don't know what the cause was.
Hmm.
It's always harder when it's a brand new baby.
Wow. But yeah, Rachel, I just want to say thanks for coming on to the Indie Authors podcast today.
Thank you for
It was
having me.
Thank you. Thank you. We're thankful you gave us a great talk. We talked about your farm. We talked somewhat of your background and just the process of being an author, which is a very dynamic experience, as we know. Um,
It's a very odd that breaks the mold experience, and
Absolutely. All right, Rachel. Thank you.